Tucked into the northwest corner of South Africa, on the border of Namibia, lies a unique mountain desert wilderness known as the Richtersveld, home to the Nama people and stage for the 4-day 150-kilometer Richtersveld Wildrun. This biological hotspot and World Heritage Site is today known as the I-Ice Richtersveld Transfrontier Park, a cross-border conservation initiative managed on the South African side by the South African National Parks.
The I Richtersveld, absolutely beautiful place. To me, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It is one of the places where you can sit down and you actually become one with yourself. You actually sit down and start realizing what God has actually put on this earth for us as humans to actually start experiencing and feel. And that is really what the Richtersveld is. Being in the Richtersveld calms me down. And I think it calms a whole lot of people down. It just makes them start realizing who and what they are. Most beautiful place in the world.
Over the 4-day 150-kilometer journey, runners got to experience everything that the Richtersveld has to offer. From breathtaking views to its unique flora and harsh mountainous landscape, each day brought with it something new and exciting, something to challenge the runners and bring out every aspect of trail running. The route took the runners to places sometimes only accessible on foot, ensuring that the true heart of the Richtersveld was felt in every possible way. A glorious red morning dawned on the 60 brave runners participating in the first ever Richtersveld Wildrun. Armed with their GPS units, emergency gear and nutrition for the day, runners warmed up for the start of what promised to be an adventure-filled odyssey. An exciting duel was expected up front over the coming days between Zimbabwean Bernard Rickards and American Matt Hart, who shared a quiet word at the start. Day 1 is a 38.8 kilometer day from Sendlingsdrift to Dikoi with an aid station at 22 kilometers. Significant features include the Faith Sisters and the final ridgeline through spreads of Pearson's aloe, an aloe species found nowhere else in the world.
2, 1, off you go guys, enjoy!
With absolutely no idea of what lay before them over the next 4 days, the runners finally departed Sendlingsdrift, embarking not only on an adventure, but one of introspection and self-discovery too.
Day 1 of the Richtersveld, and we start at Sendlingsdrift obviously, and we head out southeast towards the Hellskloof Pass. The terrain is gently climbing, but it's undulating through the sort of foothills, let's say, of the Nemersberge, they call them. And so the terrain is a mixture of sort of open alluvial plains to running through some riverbeds, climbing over a couple of the saddles between the 5 sister peaks, and very open and very sort of introducing the runner to that wild running aspect. It's not too technical, it's nice and flowing, it's a really beautiful running terrain, and it gets them into using the GPS and familiarizing themselves with the kind of terrain that's going to be coming in the days ahead. But really it gets them into that lovely sense of open running as they weave their way in amongst these hills towards the aid station and checkpoint.
Roughly 20 kilometers into the day, the pre-race favourites Bernard Rickards and Matt Hart were alone out front as they approached the aid station at 22 kilometers.
A couple miles in, it was just Bernard and I, and then we got to the aid station and I stopped to fill my bottle, and when I looked up, he was already a speck down the road. He had torn out of there. I think he was just decided he was going to make a move at that point. I don't have the leg speed that he has, and so I just put my head down and I felt pretty good. It's just the flats with his leg speed. I gotta let him do his thing, and I'll try to do my thing later.
The leading lady, Tracy Zunkel, had picked a different route around the Faith Sisters and was on her own as she made her way across the plains. Halfway through the first stage, runners were already starting to get a good idea of what they'd be doing for the next couple of days, enjoying an experience made possible largely from the support of Boundless.
Well, Boundless Southern Africa is a marketing unit that works with 9 countries in Southern Africa, and we focus on raising awareness of seven different trans-frontier conservation areas. So the II's Richtersveld is one of those 7 that we work with, and we have another event here in September every year, a mountain bike event, and we just really like working with the park managers in this area to help them with their events. So when we heard about this Richtersveld Wildrun, we were really keen to support it in as much as possible so that it can be a success in its inaugural run.
After a fairly easy introduction to the Richtersveld, it was time to tackle Hellskloof Pass, a steep drag to the top of the Tatasberg.
Hellskloof is quite significant. It's really what you have to get through to get into the main section of the Richtersveld. So it's almost like a natural barrier. And it's not that high, it gets up to about 650 meters. But in that ascent, you're leaving the sort of diamond plains of the Orange River and you're heading now into the mountainous desert, and you're climbing up Hellskloof, past Pearson's Halo, this species found nowhere else in the world, and then following the ridgeline with views down over the plain that you've come up from, and looking into now your first inkling into what lies ahead over the next few days as you look into the main bowl of the Richtersveld Desert. And soon you drop off this ridgeline and down into camp at De Kooi, which was one of the original farmstead areas of the Richtersveld. So at the end of a long, hard day, I think it's really wonderful to come back and run into a camp with hot showers, good food, comfortable, really comfortable camp environment. And I think it just rounds off a really wonderful experience.
During the night, the runners received a rude awakening in their riverbed campsite as the skies unleashed unprecedented showers onto the Richtersveld, the ensuing flash flood threatening to wash the campsite down the Orange River.
About 3 a.m. I think someone started coming around and woke me up, and I remember thinking, I hope this is a bad dream, or I'm not listening to this unless it's serious. I hope someone's not joking. Because I didn't have any water in my tent, thankfully, at that point.
And I knew we were in a riverbed, that was pretty obvious. And I knew it hadn't stopped raining really hard. And everyone had joked before bed that this is as much rain as they get in a year, it's already fallen.
I love the fact that we could all laugh about it afterwards, and I love the fact that it just added to the whole experience. And besides, who comes to the desert and experiences rain? We did, and that's also something different.
Thankfully, the front had moved on and patches of blue sky promised perfect running conditions on what was set to be a challenging day for most runners. Day 2 takes the runners to the edge of the highest range of mountains in the area called the Tatasberg and the natural southern border of the II's Richtersveld Transfrontier Park. Starting off, we run down the Tatasberg before turning to climb over a short saddle before dropping into one of the natural springs in the area called Water. This is the natural break in the Tatasberg mountain range and the entrance to a spectacular open valley.
With a wild run, we're trying to create that sense of wild run. So you're in an area, you want to run wild. You want to run with a sense of that you're not confined to a single point. So we use a combination of 2 elements in the wild run, and that is a GPS with a route plotted for each day. You're not following a marker, you're not following signboards, you're following your own signs and your own markers that you've got in your hand. And you can pick a route between between 2 points. So if the guys want to drop into the riverbed and run along the riverbed, that's cool. If they want to stay high and traverse along a goat trail, that's also cool. So it's really that sense of, wow, I can pick my own route here within the relative confines of that GPS route.
Stamping his authority on the race, Rukadze had surged to the front and was making short work of the short steep climbs scattered throughout the second day.
One of the reasons we chose winter in the Richtersveld is because for 99% of the time it is cold mornings, and by midday, lunchtime, afternoon, you can get anything upwards of between 20 and 30 degrees. So it really is ideal temperatures. It's dry, very seldom get rain that time of the year. Bearing in mind, of course, that the summer temperatures get upwards of 60 degrees Celsius. So really, you know, that time of year is perfect for running. So one of the unusual aspects of the Richtersveld this year was the fact we had half of the annual rainfall in one night, right over our camp. And in the dry riverbed we were camped in, which turned into a flood, obviously, and we had to move the camp. But that's a very, very unusual aspect, and for 9 times out of 10 in the Richtersveld, the event will run in warm conditions, clear skies.
It's an adventure. It's our day-to-day lives don't necessarily have any adventure in them. And so signing up for an ultra or a staged race, it's just a great way to sort of put yourself out there and have an adventure. You know, go out into the mountains, into the wilderness, and sort of play. They're challenging and they're hard, and that's what makes them really fun.
The last couple of kilometers had the runners navigating their way through dry riverbeds, challenging underfoot with loose rocks and slippery clay, but as usual, Bernard Rukadze's fleet-footed step made it seem all too easy as he made his way to a consecutive stage victory. Roughly 3 minutes back on Rukadze, American Matt Hart stuck to his own game plan as he finished up the last 2 kilometers of the day. A tough day for many of the runners, but far from the most difficult. Day 2 ended off with the promise of clear blue skies to come. The following day was set to be an enthralling one, and runners would need all the rest they could get as the sun set over Hakkiesdoring. On day 3 we leave the southern mountains behind and make our way northwards towards the green swathe of the Gerib River Valley. To get there though is one of the most memorable days on the Richtersveld Wildrun, starting in true Wildrun style up through a network of interconnected gullies and plains to the edge of the almighty Springbok Vlakte, a massive open plain made famous by the hundreds of thousands of springbok that used to graze here in days gone by. On the far side of this vast open plateau lies the granite massif called the Tatasberg, and it is toward this imposing structure that the runners head. From the aid station at the base of the Tatasberg, it is up and over into Papekloof they go, traversing huge granite slabs and negotiating boulders the size of houses. Papekloof is a welcome open running kloof dropping 900 meters over 8 kilometers to the banks of the Gerib River. The final stretch is a flat 13 kilometers along the banks of the Gerib River, hard work after a tough day.
I think me navigating, as I say, it has its plus and minus sides. Firstly, you can run your own race. That's the positive side of things, because it's important that you go your own pace. If you want to stop and enjoy the scenery, you have the freedom to do that. On the other hand, it requires a lot of concentration. So you're running, it's often over really difficult terrain. You're always looking at your GPS, always making a decision for the next move, but that's also quite fun. It's fun navigating your own way. I actually quite enjoyed it, because at the end of each day it was like I performed something on top of just running. I actually found my way through proper wilderness, and yeah, it was great for me. I enjoyed that side of things. It's also, time passes so quickly when you're navigating, when you're looking, when you're running, when you're concentrating on your surroundings. I think for someone who's never used a GPS, it can be scary going out there. There's nothing for miles, so you can feel quite alone. But I had faith that it was all going to work out, and yeah, it was great.
As part of our daily safety with enabling VHF communications and checkpoints, the checkpoint really becomes fundamental in ensuring everybody's getting through the course and catching any injuries and so on. But it's an opportunity for the runners to basically get checked in, so we know that they're there, get checked out, and also for them to get some of their Quell bottled water there, get some snacks, the rush bar, the race food. Guys can kind of get a bite to eat, refresh their senses a little bit, and then head off on the second half of the route. Stage 3, I think for many other runners, will stand out in their memory. Day 1 and day 2, you know, you've seen 2 special days and transects, let's say, of the Richtersveld, but day 3 really sums up the place in a nutshell, and the sense of adventure really gets highlighted on day 3. It really comes to the fore, because you've got this difficult sort of adventure through the Tatasberg and a very steep climb up a very steep terrain through these granite sheets, and then over the top you get into this boulder field, and the boulder field being quite tricky and very adventurous. So yeah, I think day 3 really for a lot of people would really stand out in their minds as being the adventurous day of the 4 days, the one that really pushed a few boundaries.
Here we see race leader and eventual winner Zimbabwean-born Bernard Rickardzo working the Tatasberg boulder field and being cheered on by fellow runners. From day 2, runners are started in reverse order, with the slowest runners first and the fastest last, creating a wonderful sense of community between the runners who see the action unfold.
Well, initially I wasn't going to run, so I wasn't totally prepared, but I just saw what was happening, and I wanted to experience also, you know, get an idea of the experience that the runners were having. So I decided to kit up on the 3rd day, and I just had an absolutely amazing day. It was one could take one's time. There wasn't a rush. I went out with the slow group to start off with, and we really had an amazing day out. It is also wonderful being on tracks that you don't get to normally when you come to the park, and that really for me was the highlight. And the bouldering over the Tatasberg is just fantastic, and the teamwork that we were forced into having to be able to get everybody that was with us in the group across, and that was really a great bit of camaraderie.
When you feel like you're stuck in a rut, just find your way today, don't wait. When you can't seem to find that fire that fuels your mind. When you feel like you're stuck in a rut, just find your way today, don't wait. When you can't seem to find that fire that fuels your mind, 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 your mind.
This year, local Richtersveld resident and National Parks employee Chris Josip, seen here finishing stage 3, ran the whole event in boots. After a long day's run, what better than a swim in the Gerib River to ease the legs? It's dawn on the final day. Weary bodies roll out of tents for a hot breakfast to fuel the last 38 kilometers to the finish at Sendlingsdrift. Leaving the green swathe of the Gerib Valley, we start the day in the narrow winding gorge aptly named Kookkloof, cooking valley for the searing temperatures that occur here in summer. The route winds out of Kookkloof onto the upper open plains before ducking back into another wild kloof.
Stage 4, leaving the banks of the Orange River, we head up Kookkloof first of all. It's aptly named for, in the summertime, one of the hottest temperatures we recorded there. And day 4 really is another significant stage and designed that way. Day 3 is really stands out. Day 4 is really the cherry on the cake. It starts off leaving the Orange River, and then it widens out as you're heading upstream now, out of this dry riverbed, and you're making your way out onto the upper plains. And then we duck them into another kloof, and we weave our way through a kloof, and eventually we come out at the apex of the day's climbing, at the top of Arkadis Pass, they call it. And it's another significant change in the journey, because we're starting to leave this inner sanctum of the Richtersveld, and we're starting to now head back out towards Sendlingsdrift.
The geology of the place is mind-blowing, so I don't think you can describe to anyone the places that we've been over the last 3 days, and so much has been different. So you go from one geological site to the next, and from different layers of rock strata to different vegetation species to a bit of sand and desert to a river to steep mountains to huge boulders. I mean, you can't compare. It's diverse in its own desert way.
After traversing the Halfmens Plateau and navigating a tricky slope, we finally access Halfmens Ridge, so named for a unique species of plant that grows in abundance here, the Pachypodium nemaquinum, colloquially known as the Halfmens. After negotiating Halfmens Ridge, it's a steep technical descent to the valley floor and the entry into the crystal fields, a simply mind-blowing assembly of geological colours, from fields of snow-white quartz to pitch-black dolerite fields. The last pitch up takes runners over a low summit before the final descent through the maze and out into the final straight at Sendlingsdrift. As the heat of the day crept up, runners slowly made their way ever closer to Sendlingsdrift, the starting point of their race, but first they had to conquer the outlying dunes and gullies. Finishing off a tough fourth day, runners revelled in the euphoria of having completed a truly remarkable journey through the Richtersveld. It was with a new sense of fulfillment that the Wildrunners finally left their temporary desert home to return once again to their normal lives. In the final results, it was Bernard Ricardza who finally conquered all challenges, taking an amazing victory just under 1 hour ahead of Matt Hart. Despite leading from the outset, Tracy Zunkel was eventually relegated to 3rd spot, leaving Katja Sogert to take the top spot in the women's field. To become a part of the Wildrun sensation, visit www.wildrun.com for more info on the other Wildrun events in Lesotho and the Wild Coast.